Good afternoon and welcome. My name is James Hacon. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at MAPAL Group, and many of you will know me from RMI and other industry events. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we're really here to talk about the ongoing challenge that we know faces all of us in hospitality. And I really don't need to introduce the fact that we are in the middle of a challenging time in terms of hospitality talent. But what I really wanted to do is lots of conversation with employers talking about what they're doing individually. I've been to lots of webinars and been involved in lots of different things in that respect. But what there hasn't necessarily been is much talking about some of the organizations that are doing things beyond that to try and fix the issue and really focus much more on how we can think about this for the mid to long term. And I think that the three people I've asked to join me today are really excellent in terms of being able to talk about that. So we've got Chris Gamm, who's the Chief Executive of Springboard. So welcome, Chris. We've got Marc McCulloch, who many of you will know as being a guru when it comes to hospitality marketing and is running an initiative called Hospitality Rising. Carly Pickering, who is a brilliant people person within the hospitality sector and is one of the co-founders of Beers and Peers, which is an organization that really helps to bring people together who ultimately are able to help fix this problem too. From our perspective, we're going to be with you for the next hour or so. I really wanted to start off though by talking about, it's interesting that right now I'm in Denmark. I hope to have had a really quiet room. Unfortunately, I haven't, so I'm going to be muting myself quite regularly to make sure that the background noise doesn't penetrate this podcast too much. But what's really interesting in Denmark is that I'm here speaking at a conference which is exactly about this. So the event is called Restoring Restaurants, and it's about the issues to do with hospitality recruitment, retention, and there's definitely a view in the UK that this is all to do with Brexit, I think. And I think that I just wanted to be clear that I'm working with people in more than a dozen European countries right now, and MAPAL works in 54 countries, and we don't know of a market around the world that isn't dealing with the issue. And I think that there are much more granular issues to do with this than necessarily Brexit. I'm not saying that Brexit hasn't got something to do with it, for sure, but there are challenges when it comes to the change in mentality and work ethic and views around well-being and so on after the pandemic. And I think what's really interesting, we hold hundreds of thousands, if not more, employee records within our tools that we're able to kind of analyze some of the data around within MAPAL. And one of the things that we found really interesting is a downward shift in the number of hours that individuals are working. And of course, this in its own right requires more people to be able to deliver the same amount. And of course, for the most part, we've been seeing increases based on 2019 over recent months. So there's almost this perfect storm of more custom, increased demand, and then challenges around people wanting to work less, and also people moving to other sectors. So I think that within the next hour or so, I'm not suggesting that we're going to solve the issue, because I'm pretty sure that it takes a much bigger impact to do that. But let's hope that there's some really tangible bits to take away. And also, as organizations within the sector, you're able to think about which organizations you can support and get involved in to help solve some of these issues for the mid to long term. So on that basis, I'm really going to pass over to begin with to Marc McCulloch, who's going to talk a little bit about the Hospitality Rising campaign that he's been heading up. And then we'll move on to Chris. And for those of you that saw the agenda, Kelly unfortunately lost her voice today, so we've been substituted for Chris, which is a fantastic substitution. So, and then we'll pass to Carly. And the second half of the session will be talking a little bit more about a discussion around some of these challenges about overcoming the skills gap, perceptions of the sector, how we can think differently, and so on. So for now, I'm going to pass to Marc. I'm going to mute my microphone and leave it to you, Mr. McCulloch.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope you're doing okay on St. Andrew's Day. So a very big day for me and Kelly, who's not here, unfortunately. So hopefully you'll be able to see my screen and the presentation just coming up. So Chris or James or someone, could you just tell me that you can see it? Is that all right?
Yeah.
You can see it. Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so I won't take up too much of your time, but I wanted to flick you through the story of hospitality rising and what we're hoping to do. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Marc McCulloch, and you can check me out at supersonic.marketing, supersonic.marketing, so you can check me out there. So big, audacious goal to solve the recruitment crisis forever. In my other life, I'm a virtual chief marketing officer for some of these brands in the past, and these brands at the moment, like Dishoom, for example, Buzzworks in Scotland, etc. So what we've got here is the biggest hospitality recruitment ad campaign that the UK and beyond has ever seen. I want it to be plastered everywhere, from TV to TikTok and back again. So we need a government-sized campaign to be able to do that. And I really want this to be Army Be the Best, which was a hugely successful campaign in the UK, but we want to have that for hospitality. So we want to get to the root cause of the problem. And what I was seeing was many people talking about it, but many people not doing anything about it. So an old client used to always say, when all is said and done, a lot more is said than done. And it's very true. Sometimes you've just got to step up and go for it. So worked with a research company called Gamm. They let us know that 1 out of 5 people only would want to work in hospitality. That's not a good start. We want to get that to 2 in the short term. 2 in 5 people would recommend to someone else that they work in hospitality. Still, that's not good. So we need to get that to 3. So we've got a big problem, and it's actually a big brand problem that we have. So it's something like in the past, Skoda, where the product wasn't loved by everyone, and also the advertising wasn't particularly great, and what people said about it wasn't great either. We're kind of in that area. There is some good points to it, but in the main, lots of people, wouldn't be keen to have one. So I thought, well, I know a bit about advertising. I'm not as sexy as this man, obviously, but I know a bit about advertising. And also I know a lot about hospitality, hence the waistline. So, hopefully I'll be able to bring the 2 together and come up with something interesting. I went out to the top 20 agencies in the UK, Saatchi & Saatchi, Leith, etc. And I was really lucky that a guy called Julian Douglas, or Dougie, stepped forward and said, I will help you for free through my organisation, the IPA, which is the Institute of Practitioners for Advertising. So he saw us as a social problem, which means that it's not a commercial one. So he's given us £250,000 worth of creative help for free. So we got the Avengers to assemble, and now we have the lead behavioural economist at Ogilvy. We have the lead strategist from the Army, Matt Waxman. This is Belonging he did. And we also have Google and Amazon's lead agencies doing the creative. So the strategy is we will get people who are open to the idea of coming to work in hospitality, and we're going to talk to them about a bold, authentic benefit that only hospitality can do. So we found that young people are bored of being bored. And we also found that older people who are extroverted are bored of being bored too. So we figured out that through listening and researching, etc., you can say many things about hospitality, but it's not boring. So what we'll do is we'll displace all of the other options that people would have to actually, go into work, under 30s, entry-level jobs. And what we'll do is we'll get them into hospitality because we're the fun place to be. I hope to show you the creative. We're a little bit short on time, but I'll be able to get that out to you through James. And also the sound wasn't working okay. But just to kind of show you some of the visual language. So live fast, work young. This is the kind of area it's going to be in. So this is the edgy brands like this one, the more edgy brands like this one. But I'll show you the ad another time. I'll get James to send it round. But here's some posters that you might like in terms of the tone of voice. They're obviously not designed up, but always be on the front line of fun. Sounds like some fun shift. You've got to be careful how you say that. And then no one ever stayed for a walk-in in a call centre. Second route was all about being a local legend. And it was this sort of language, if you work in a local pub, restaurant, hotel, whatever, you're known locally, you're a bit of a local legend. Again, we'll show you the mood movie for that another time. But here's some of the posters. Cogs stack shelves, legends bring the party. Compliments to the shelf stacker, said no one ever. You won't find many customers buying a cold collar of beer. And then it's just, we're going after this thing where we want everyone to get together. So if you're trying to make the London Eye busier, you don't market the London Eye, you market London. So we're doing the same thing. We want to market hospitality, therefore everyone will pull together and benefit more. We're looking for £5 million by charging everyone £10 a head. So that's the way we're going to make the money. We've now got over £300,000, I think, as of this morning, and we only really launched last week, so that's pretty good. We want investors, government, sponsors, and suppliers to get involved too. Monster are giving us a job board for free, so we're going to be working with them, and it'll be a locked job site, and you've got to pay to play. We'll then give out local marketing packs to every venue. You'll have a kite mark to say that it's a good place to work. We'll get everyone's brands and as much of the marketing as we possibly can. Then the hope is you'll have loads of CVs coming in. People will stay as well because they'll be proud to work in hospitality. We'll acquire them, get them in, and then great people like Chris and Springboard and Career Scope, apprenticeships, etc., they'll retain the people as well. And then we just need to keep this going. You can't do it for 1 year and then stop. So it'll be a yearly thing and it'll get bigger and better every year. We hope that all boats will float and everyone gets a really good result out of this. Some of the brands that are behind it, but there's more big ones have just joined the last few days, which is super exciting. Welcome Break, and we're in final chats with Whitbread and things like that, which is exciting. And then we've just got some lovely people that have been helping us along the way. So the fundraise will be the end of Jan, or by the end of Jan. Then the ads will get made summer hot, hopefully, February, March, April. And then we'll launch around May time, I would have thought. And then the thing to think about is we will be able to help all of you with the mid to long term if you can just survive the short term. We'll be focusing on that. And that's everything in Hospitality Rising. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you so much, Mark. I think it's a fantastic initiative, and as you say, I think it takes people working together to really drive this agenda home. We, for one, within the MAPAL Group, are really proud to support the initiative, and we've been behind it as one of the first people to get involved. So, thank you to Mark.
Thank you.
Next up, I'm going to pass over to Chris Gamm to talk a little bit about Springboard 2022 and some of the work they're doing to support in a very similar way in terms of driving people into the sector and supporting. So over to you, Chris. Thank you.
There we go. Hi, everyone. Can you see that? James, can anyone see that?
Yeah, we can see it. Thanks.
Oh, brilliant. So yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Fantastic to be with you. As James said, sorry that I'm not Kelly, but she woke up this morning with a stinker of a cough and a cold. So I've stepped in at the last minute to be with you today. So my name's Chris Gamm. I'm the CEO of Springboard. And for those of you who don't know, so I've had two brilliant references already from Mark and James, but for those of you who don't know, Springboard was set up 31 years ago because there weren't enough homegrown staff coming through to fill the job vacancies in the hospitality and tourism industries. So a pretty familiar challenge, because today, as you're all aware, that challenge has probably never been greater, and Springboard's needs has therefore probably never been more important. So our mission is to future-proof the talent pipeline for hospitality and tourism. What this means is we promote the industry as a great place to work to the next generation. We attract talent into it. We give young people the skills to, young and disadvantaged people the skills to launch their career, and then we help them find a brilliant job and get sustainable work in the industry. We do this through our education programs in schools and colleges and careers days and hospitality showcase sessions. We help people get sustained jobs through our employability programs, our training programs, through tailored support, dedicated aftercare, access to work experience. And we equip hospitality businesses with hardworking and motivated and enthusiastic staff. And this last one is particularly important for today's discussion. So I want to tell you about a few ways that we are supporting the industry through this challenge. The first is Springboard 2022. It's our solution to future-proofing the talent pipeline and easing the staffing crisis for the industry. It's the biggest, most ambitious project that Springboard have ever delivered. And our goal is to get 10,000 young people into work in hospitality, skilled and engaged by the end of next year, by the end of 2022. Since launching last year, we've made really great progress, and we've supported more than 2,500 young people into work. We've got 2,500 people into work in the hospitality industry so far, and we're working with many, many more. It's going to be a huge focus over the next 13 months to get to that 10,000 target. Second way we're supporting the industry is through the Kickstart scheme. We're a gateway employer, Kickstart gateway employer. This means we're the conduit, the middleman between the government and between employers, and our role is to make the process really easy through managing their application, and for many, delivering the employability training, the mandatory training linked to the scheme. We're working with about 150 employers. You can see some of them here, some very big ones, but also many, many small independent businesses. We've had more than 3,000 roles approved by the government, so we're a very significant gateway employer, one of the biggest. And today we've filled more than 500 of those. So we've got 500 young people into work placements within the industry. Again, a bit of a way to go, and we haven't got long to go. We've got 4 months until the scheme closes to fill as many of those roles as possible. So if there are any employers registered with Kickstart on the call today, the message that we're sharing with the businesses we work with, people like these, is don't hang around, get your skates on, because the scheme does end at the end of March, and that's a very hard stop. No roles will be advertised beyond the end of February, so you've got to get your roles live now, get recruiting now, because once it's gone, and it is a really great opportunity to get a young person into your business with the support from the government, covering across both wages and the training that you need to deliver, which is designed to make them a brilliant part of your business for the longer term. And then the third way that we're supporting the industry is through CareerScope. It started life back at the beginning of the pandemic as the industry support hub to support those to support our people, those who've lost their job due to the pandemic and those who are looking to enter the industry. It was completely innovative because it's the industry coming together, and you can see the 5 organisations, so us, and Hospitality Action, and UK Hospitality, and Savoy Educational Trust, and the Institute of Hospitality. So we came together to create this new thing to support our people. It's built around 5 key pillars: careers advice, free training, support, so health and wellbeing, financial redundancy advice, all sorts of different support, a community, and jobs. Thousands and thousands of live jobs. We've got about more than 30,000 live jobs on there today, and it's everything through caterer.com. It's all the government, all the apprentices through the government portal. What, about 6,000 apprenticeships, and direct feeds from some of the UK's biggest employers. So, yeah, while it started life as a support hub, it's very much a careers hub today. So it's how we promote hospitality to thousands and thousands of young people, tens of thousands of young people through our work in schools and colleges, to lots of unemployed people through our work with our employability programs and our partners like the Job Centre. Plus, it's how we, as Mark's identified already, we need to open up that pipeline and get many more people coming into it. So it's and that's something that Springboard are doing on a slightly smaller scale. But so, for example, for the first time, we're marketing directly to young people through social media, digital, smart marketing, and this year we're spending about £100,000 on advertising on platforms like YouTube and TikTok and Facebook to reach this group, and they're all coming through to CareerScope. Last summer, over this summer, in fact, there's a Scottish government campaign to promote Scottish tourism. Again, that's funneling all people through to CareerScope. And then I can't say much about it just yet, but we're doing a really exciting bit of work with the Evening Standard, which is going to launch next Tuesday the 7th of December, in which Springboard, we're going to be working with them to promote careers in hospitality to London, to young Londoners, young unemployed Londoners, and help upskill them and get them into work in the industry. So watch this space. But that's a whistle-stop tour of Springboard's, and thank you for listening, and back to James.
Thank you, Chris. I think that the work you do is fantastic, and I think we're, again, at MAPAL Group, we're equally proud to be involved in our ongoing partnership. So thank you so much for all that you and your team do for the sector.
Thanks for your support.
Last off, I'm going to pass to Carly, and what I think is really, really cool about the whole Beers and Peers thing is that there are lots of really great but quite formal association type organizations within the sector, and I know that they play a really important part, but I quite like what Carly and the team have done with Beers and Peers, created something more informal that allows people to come together and share advice and war stories and so on and so forth. But I'll let you explain in a bit more detail, Carly.
Great, cheers, James. Yes, definitely. I think Hayley, who's a co-founder with myself at Beers and Peers, said that we do perfectly imperfect events, and that's us. You know, we are who we are, and we love what we do. And so hi everyone. I'm Carly, I'm one of the co-founders of Beers and Peers, along with the legend that is Hayley Connor. We founded this about just over 2 years ago, and it purely came out of having somewhere for people that worked alone in standalone roles in SMEs. So I was a HR manager in a small pub company, and I actually went to LinkedIn to ask for a piece of advice, and that's how me and Hayley started speaking. And then we got together, we clicked, and we were like, do you know what? We actually need more of this. So people that work alone in L&D, in-house recruitment, HR, in very small organisation, you need the support because, you know, we don't know everything. And so you need to be able to look to peers and actually be able to say, hey, I need a bit of help, or do you know what this is, or, you know, how can we work together? So that's how it started. And there was, I think, 5 or 6 of us at the very first event, and we hosted an event last week, which was an open mic night, and we had about 50 people come along. And we are what you see is what you get. And it is all about having a safe community where people can come together and share best practices, talk about current situations and what's happening. And of course, you know, we work in hospitality, and just because we're in HR, we like a beer or two. So hence why it's Beers and Peers. And throughout the last couple of years, we've hosted some amazing roundtable events. And that really is where people have come together. And instead of being, you know, a couple of years ago where everyone's a competitor, we're now a community, and we really do share what is going on, any tricks, any trade, you know, of the trade. And it's really, really important to us that we continue doing that for people that work, you know, in smaller companies, that need that shoulder, that need to be able to say, oh my gosh, it's crazy at the moment, let's chat about it. And being in that environment where it is much more informal than formal. And, you know, it is about sharing stories. And I think where we're at hospitality at the moment with regards to recruitment, it is challenging, not impossible, challenging, because it's such a great industry. And when we hosted our open mic night, it was all about the #HospitalityProud campaign that we started just over 2 years ago. And we started that around about the same time that I believe the government said that hospitality was unskilled, you know, great message to send out there. So we were like, right, no, why are we proud to work in hospitality? And as I mentioned last week, the open mic night, we heard people stand up and talk about their experience of hospitality and the career and the journey and the excitement and the skills that everyone's learned, and how, you know, taking that waitress job when you were 14, you're now a HR manager or head of people in some of the biggest brands. And that journey is what we're trying to really get out there and say, look, everyone, you can have an amazing career in hospitality. Look where we all came from. And, you know, it's work hard, play hard, and away you go. And I think Beers and Peers as an organisation is very much there for the support function of people working in L&D, HR, and in-house recruitment. And, you know, the plan moving forward is continue being that support and to continue getting together and sharing those ideas. And, you know, that's one way that we can really tackle, you know, recruitment and, you know, shortages at the moment, is to come together and to be that community, because hospitality is such an incredible industry and it's all about people, and that's what we're here to do. So that really is kind of like Beers and Peers. We are a community for SMEs. We'd come together, we share our stories, best practices. We really, really love what we do. And I think, you know, it's great to have everyone in a room that's going through the same thought process, the same struggles, to know that we're not alone. You know, the HR manager that's sat in a small little business isn't alone. We are here to help support and guide and do what we can do to push out the stories of hospitality proud. So we've got some great events coming up next year. We want to go bigger. We really do. We want to make sure that everyone is involved. We're really looking at our values at the moment, and we're asking the Beers and Peers ambassadors to say, what should we do? What do we need to do to help support you, to help grow? And I think, you know, it's just so exciting because of Beers and Peers, there's been so many amazing friendships formed. You know, people are now in contact with each other, and it's just great. And it's organically grown. You know, as I say, we're not conference holders, we're not events managers or anything like that, but we do know how to get people in a room and supply some beer. That's what we're really good at. So yeah, that's Beers and Peers in a bit of a nutshell. So if anyone's keen, please get in contact. Our information is on LinkedIn, and that's where we update all what's going on and any events, and it really is open to all. You know, if you're passionate about hospitality, you're in the right room. So yeah, that's us, James. Thanks.
Thank you, Carly. I think it's a really interesting place to be, and I think that there's definitely, I mean, it's undoubted that we've got this amazing passion, and I think that we're all sold in on the fact that hospitality is a great career. But playing devil's advocate, I think the reality is there's lots of people that obviously don't think hospitality is a great career. I mean, that is the reality, right? And I do think that we have to be careful that as a sector, that we don't fall into the trap of becoming an echo chamber of positivity, because I get that there is lots of positives, but unfortunately there's clearly lots of people that don't see it. And I think it's really interesting. I mean, I was chatting through some of my kind of observations and some of the stuff that we see from some user focus groups, and it's really interesting that one of the key things that I can't escape from is that actually it's interesting that we have got I mean, for the most part, most people have seen hospitality workforces about being young workforces. I think one of the things that I know we're being challenged on at the moment is let's think about different groups of people. So let's look at older workforces. Let's look at people who, and I mean, a number of you know that I'm involved with Only a Pavement Away. Let's look at people from more vulnerable backgrounds or less traditional backgrounds. But I do think there's a really interesting challenge around when we think about the core market, which has traditionally been the young audience. I only have to look at my own family members. I look at some of the initiatives I've been involved with, some of the investments we work with, and there's definitely a gap there, which is around, I question around the whole ability to converse and the ability to necessarily be social. I think actually if we rewind to when, I guess for me and any of you guys were younger and at a point where maybe you took your first hospitality job, the idea of kind of going out with your mates and all the rest of it was pretty standard. You kind of fast forward to today, and how much of your engagement happens online as a young person? How much of your engagement is happening on Xbox rather than out and about? I mean, it's an interesting question mark in terms of, I heard in one group recently where someone said, well, actually, I'm really nervous about whether or not I can even do the basics, like pull pints. I'm really nervous about, and there is an interesting generational piece about there being more of a nervousness amongst the Generation Z around doing new things. By default, there's a very strong sentiment around the moving yourself out of your comfort zone. So there's some really interesting challenges at play. And that probably leads to my first question, Chris, because I know that you're very focused on a young audience and trying to engage that young audience. I mean, within your world, what are the key challenges do you actually see? Like what are you hearing? What are the challenges that people put forward as to why they might not consider hospitality?
I mean, look, I'd say one of the biggest challenges we need to overcome is changing perceptions among, of the people who influence the careers. So teachers, careers advisors, parents, about what fantastic career hospitality can offer. And this is absolutely quite a big focus of Springboard. And, I sit on a hospitality apprenticeship steering group. This is a really key focus at the moment. How do what tools and resources do we need to get into the hands of careers advisors? And there are thousands of careers advisors that influence millions of students and millions of sets of parents. And there's not much out there at the moment. That how do we make it really easy for them to promote hospitality to students, because they're focusing on all sorts of other careers, whether it's engineering or technology or also anything. But hospitality, how do we get further up the radar for them? Because there's not much out there for them at the moment. But in terms of the young people we speak to, they've been hit really hard by the pandemic, and that they have been hugely affected in terms of redundancies, in terms of the confidence, and that's what Springboard's all about: getting them, building their confidence, getting them work ready, getting them excited about hospitality, and then hopefully passing them on to a brilliant employer who can take it from there and build those skills.
And with the challenge around unemployment being quite low at the moment, how does that impact? I mean, is it mostly the unemployed you're looking at? Are you looking at, is it about moving people in from different industries? I mean, it's interesting that I come from a part of the country where it's there's a lot of poverty, and it's interesting that the whole 0 hour thing is an issue. It's the lack of consistent work or credible work is an issue, rather than necessarily just being in work full stop, right?
To your point earlier, so Springboard supports sort of young and disadvantaged people, and we do a large proportion of sort of under 30. But to your point earlier about, absolutely, I think in terms of how's the industry going to solve this, the current sort of staffing and skills shortage, it's absolutely looking at new talent pools, whether it's parents returning to the workplace, it could be refugees, it could be ex-offenders, as you said, it could be care leavers, it could be an older workforce, and Springboard, absolutely, we support all these different groups, help them get work ready. But in terms of what the industry needs to do is, I'd say that we'd need to really embrace those who do face barriers to employment, those at risk of being left behind, if it's to ensure fill the vacancies longer term. But on the flip side, we find that the people from these groups who we do support into work really value their role, really do value their job. They're engaged and motivated, and they'll stick with you longer than the industry average, a lot longer than the industry average.
That's really fascinating. I think it's just interesting around making sure we dig in and really pick on what the challenges are. I think on that point, Mark, it's interesting that if we think about it from a marketing standpoint, and you approach this as a marketing challenge, and you talk through your thought process and your strategy and how you get there. I mean, you talked a little bit about some of the insights, but what insights were you basing your campaign on? Like, what's the in-depth challenge that we're facing, rather than just the headline challenge?
It's quite a lot, I mean, I think that in no particular order, and don't shoot the messenger, I think there's a double standards thing going on as well, that a lot of people that maybe work in hospitality wouldn't want it for their kids, for example. So we need to kind of look at home first, I think. There's a lot of people in management that say, you can have it for your university year, but after that, I would be a lawyer, So that's a issue. I think we could do more. A lot of people do, but I think we need to, look at home. I think also, in terms of the barriers, it's badly paid, badly treated. My knees are going to be knackered. I do 32,000 steps a shift, and I can't plan my life. I'm going to get called at the last minute to come in and all. So that was all the kind of bad stuff, right? Then we looked on the sunnier side of the street, right? And we started talking to people, and they said, well, in what job would you go in on your day off to see your mates? It wasn't even referred to as a team. See, so in an office, you only go into the office when you're off if you've had a baby. That's it, right? So from that perspective, we're going, well, that's interesting, So there's a real kind of camaraderie and a team thing and all that. Then it came out, started bubbling up around, people that don't want to be in an office, people that don't want to be tied down. Super interesting. And again, that's what comes with it. It's not usual hours. It's not usual. You're going to like a cool venue usually in the main to go and, a nice place to go to work, right? You're not sitting by a desk. Then it came out about people, and those people just drive the world, so it's surround yourself with radiators, not drains, right? So the people that are in those teams are, real, what make the world go round, and they'll remember nights and stories and all these things that change their life. So, I think that's a really good one. But the biggest thing that came out was, I thought was a cracker. Well, we interviewed one boy up in Edinburgh, and he said, I would rather work 9 hours, in this particular restaurant in Scotland, than work 4 hours stacking shelves on a call centre. And that started to get quite interesting. So the whole thing is that, there are bad points about, working in hospitality. We can't profess that it's perfect, but we can't wait for it to be perfect either to go and get people to come in. I think another thing we need to be careful of is talking about careers all the time, because that's a big commitment for people. And the way I'm seeing this as a marketer is it's a trial strategy rather than a, sort of commitment strategy. So what can happen is it can get overwhelming. And also I do laugh a little bit when I see, people posting on Twitter, I started out as an AM, 30 years later I'm the CEO. 30, if you say that to a kid 30 years, they'll think they'll be dead by then, right? So we've got to think about them as well. Gen Z, they'll get a 15-second attention span. 30 years is no good, right? So, we need to be realistic here, and things have changed, But I think the other thing is, well, we're not perfect, but I think what we can do is we can shine a bright light on the great employers, and then hopefully there's a groundswell of them that's enough that will then, everyone else will start to feed in. But I'll tell you something, James, we'll not take people's money if they're a poor employer, for this. So it's only people that we know are good employers that are going to get on board with this, because it'll take one story in the Daily Mail and we're done, So we need to be really precious about that. But yeah, there's a lot of barriers, but, there's good and bad with lots of careers,
Yeah, and absolutely. I think it's really interesting. And I do think that obviously that spinning the positive is really, really important. But I do think it's really fascinating that we have seen a huge shift in the sector in terms of employment standards and in terms of over the last however long. I mean, I've been involved in the sector for, I guess, 20 plus years now.
Since you were young.
Random to say, just because my parents owned hospitality venues. And it's interesting that, if we rewind and think about the celebrity chef heyday and some of the issues around certain TV shows painting pretty negative portrayals of what it's like to work in kitchens I think that, in lots of ways, we're still fighting against some of that bad press, which at the time I think was interesting that, really interesting that I think people saw it as a kind of positive, because it meant that hospitality was getting a showing, whereas I think that in hindsight we know that that's just not the reality. I mean, on that point, Carly, I mean, you're obviously, I guess that you would like to say that in Beers and Peers that the people you've got around the table are the more progressive people, the people that want to be different and so on. I mean, what do you think, what behaviours and changes have we seen of late, and where do you think we've still got room to move as a sector?
Oh my gosh, I think everyone that I've spoken to within the Beers and Peers community, they have gone above and beyond to really look at their current ways of working, their benefits, mindfulness, mental health, and they've really taken the last couple of years where we've potentially been forced into delving really deep into how we work and as an employer, what we do. And every time I have conversations, that everyone's really, really wanting to focus on the good, improving, being better, doing better, being bigger. And I think it's so, so valuable that actually everyone in hospitality knows that. There are people sat in their desks or at home that work in the people department that are truly every day having conversations about how can we do things differently, how can we be better, what can we do to really, really strive to be the best employer that everyone can be. And I think, you know, it's not, nothing just gets ignored. Everyone sits together and they really, really do, right, okay, what are our values? Do we live by them? Do we need to change something? You know, what's our benefits package? What can we do to, you know, help the work-life balance? And I think everyone is really trying to be very transparent, and they're pushing and pushing and pushing. And, you know, like I say, we've been forced due to the pandemic to really look into it, and people are doing so much. And I think, you know, the community of peers and peers, you speak to them and they care. They really care about their employees. They really care about moving forward. And it's not that old school HR that just do all the bad stuff. You know, it's their people, their teams that really look into, you know, changing the future and adapting. And yes, hospitality is by far, you know, it can be a difficult industry sometimes, but can't every sector, you know, it's not always rainbows every day. But actually what we can do is showcase how you learn so much, the skills that you develop. And I think, you know, peers and peers and everyone that attends that cares. That's why they're there. That's why they want to move forward and really help the employers. So there's definitely been a big change in you know, what we do and how we can do it better.
Well, that's really interesting. And I mean, it's interesting that you're obviously working within a group of people-focused people, right, by default. And I think that, you know, you're often in HR, L&D, and so on. And how do you think that always translates down to operations, particularly in multi-site businesses? And that's mostly what we got on the call. I mean, how much I still hear of situations kind of semi-regularly, I suppose, where you've got kind of the old school site leaders who are like, well, I had to go through the hard graft for 70 hours a week. That's what it is. If I call you on your day off, you need to come in. Like, it's all the stuff that, you know, that Mark was referencing a minute ago. I mean, how does that translate, and what needs to happen to improve that? Because the reality is that you could believe all the things you want, and it's that whole brand and culture on paper, but not in reality. I mean, how do you embed that?
I mean, sometimes it's hard work. You know, that relationship between ops and, you know, HR, it's got stronger, but it needs to be stronger even more so, because, you know, you need everyone to come together. We've all got that kind of like that vision. We want to be great employees. We need to make money. We want to be innovative. We want to care about our people. We're actually all on the same page, but the routes of getting there and how we do it can sometimes be very, very different. You know, and historic people that have worked in the sector for 20, 30, 40 years, and I had to wear my stripes and everything like that. And then, like Mark was saying, you know, we've got a different generation coming through, and that's actually our duty to get the new generation to come through into hospitality. And we have to work on those relationships between HR and ops. And in some companies, they're like that, and other companies, there's still a bit of work to do. But that's okay, because we're recognizing it and we're having to, you know, continue working towards that, because, you know, it is our responsibility to keep hospitality going, of getting, you know, a new generation in, and the generation after that, and generation after that. And, you know, it's not quick wins, and it's not about, oh yeah, we get on today, but we won't speak again in the next ops meeting or something like that. You know, this is a constant process, and it's longevity, because hospitality's been around for years, and it sure is going to be around for many, many more to come, because, you know, it's the backbone of the UK, just saying.
No, absolutely. You've definitely sold me for sure. There's lots of comments coming through, so thank you to everyone in the audience. And just to clarify, this is published in different places and broadcast in different places. So I think we've got over 260 people logged in right now. So it's fantastic to have so many of you on, and do feel free to comment. But I'm just going to pick up a couple. So Chris Fletcher commented and said, hospitality can be a part-time gig. We need to not obsess with careers. Some of the best people I've worked with are part-timers. They need us, and we need them, and that needs to be communicated too. No point in driving thousands of new employees if we still turn them around, if we still turn them around in 90 days. I mean, I think that it's backing up a lot of what you were saying, Mark, right? I think that, and it's interesting, I mean, having worked in hospitality ops and invest in business still now, I think it's really interesting that to me, really great part-timers can be the lifeblood of the business, because on the Friday, Saturday night, they come in with this fresh energy that maybe the full-timers have lost during the week, and just bring a whole load of vibrancy to the party, right? Which I think is really important. I think there's also a comment here from Francesco, so thanks for commenting, Francesco. Going forward, the industry as a whole needs to try and work together to make hospitality more appealing, to attract new blood into the sector. I think we all agree. I think that the reality, and what I'm trying to do by probing a little bit more, is to ask the real questions that are going to result in real tangible outcome and conversation, because I think that my view is that I've heard this my whole career. I'm not necessarily sure we've seen a lot of people act on it particularly well together, but it does feel like there's a bit of a movement right now. One question specifically for you, Mark. Robert's asked, he said that he's just wondering how you were focusing in terms of routes to market with the campaign. I know you focused on the heat map of urban cities or the full UK. How are you defining the target audience? And I guess he said he missed some of your opening, and we can, of course, we'll be sharing the recording so anyone can go back to that. But maybe you can answer the bit about routes to market and geographic spread.
For sure. So we're working on media planning at the moment. It's going to be the multiplier effect, in that TV still works, and as much as everyone will say, well, it's TikTok, it's this, it's that, it's a real multiplier effect. People are double and triple screening all over the shop. So we know that works. There's going to be a big push into new digital areas. So one particular thing is, I've just had a successful campaign with Buzzworks in Scotland, where we chucked a few tens of thousands into TikTok, and we work with TikTok influencers, and we're getting around 30 applications a day. And we're now in the position of we're having to have a waiting list, which is quite nice. So we're doing all right. So, and I think it was a UK first as well, which we're pretty chuffed with. So from that point of view, we're going to be looking at it all. It's really to your last question, which was about the target audience. Target audience is, what's the biggest audience we can flip the quickest, right? And that's been defined through research, and also through the strategists for the Navy and the Army as well, and the strategists in general for brand anyway. And they've came up with under 30s that are going into entry-level positions. So we think that we can displace them. So it's almost like buying a Guinness and trying to flip someone to London Pride at that point. They might be open to it. So that's what we're hoping. That's the lowest hanging fruit for us. We can do all the other jobs. We can do the 60-year-olds, and we can get there, right? You can't eat an elephant whole. So that's the way we're going to have to do it. In terms of heat maps, we're going to do it. It's going to be pure national. We'll upweight in cities, but everyone's given money from every part and every corner of the country, so we've got to represent them. So it will be a national campaign, 2 big bursts across a 12-month period. And then some trickles in between to keep it going. So, yeah, 5 million quid. So it'll be medium weight, I would say.
Great, thank you so much, Mark. Chris, question for you. It's really interesting that you look at the brands that were on your slideshow, and we know that a lot of the businesses you're involved with, and I think that sometimes it can be very easy to think that to work with Springboard, or there needs to be an organisation with substantial means behind it, right? As in, like, there needs to be structure, there needs to be. But I mean, A, is that the case? B, how can smaller businesses, because we know that hospitality is mostly made up of smaller businesses, what kind of infrastructure do people need to put in place to be able to support young people who may have different needs than an everyday employee, say? I mean, what's the view there?
Well, in terms of, to answer the few parts of the question, in terms of which employers are we looking to work with, it's anyone that can offer a fantastic job, a really good experience to one of our trainees, anything from one job to many jobs. And so our courses, they run from typically between 3 and 6 weeks, and some will come at the end of it, and we're looking to get them a work placement or a full-time job. And our courses, again, they're national. They're in all corners of the UK and Ireland. And so, yeah, we're looking for employers who can give a really good experience and look after those people. We'll still support them for a year after they come out of our programs. So and they range from they can be the local pub with a couple of members of staff up to, as you saw, huge multinational organisations with tens of thousands of teams. The teams that do have the scale and that come with the various departments that look after their people, that there are benefits to that. But similarly, a decision that's made right up here has to go through lots of layers before you actually reach the general manager at the sharp end, who might not buy into what was agreed right at the other end of the chain. So that there's pros and cons, but for those bigger brands we work with, how do we showcase those brands to the young people? We'd typically be doing industry visits. We'd be holding our training on their sites, and we'd build the brand into the program, because part of the course, what we're doing is getting someone work ready, getting them ready and motivated and excited about going into the workplace. But the key bit is getting them excited about the hospitality industry, and it's much better if you're doing that in an amazing venue rather than on a screen or in a training room in our office.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I mean, once they're in employment, and I think, and that's the other part of this, right, is that we hosted a webinar a few months ago with one of the L&D team from Whitbread, and I remember that they presented and said that it was 30% of the new starters had gone within 30 days was the number they gave. So of course you've got a bath, we're filling it up at the top, and it's all going down the drain at the other end. I mean, there is a question mark around how people retain those people. And I remember that they said that they'd realised that one of the big initiatives, I think the most important initiative for them, was about one-on-one contact with managers, and that personal relationship, which probably doesn't come as a surprise to any of us. It's sometimes a simple thing that works. But I mean, I suppose an open question to everyone, with a view that we've got a few minutes left here now. I mean, in terms of the retention stuff, what have you seen that works well to make sure that people are more likely to stay? Maybe Chris, do you want to go first, given that you're already off mute?
Yeah, I mean, look, I was talking to an employer the other day who is losing staff to Amazon. People were going to work in the Amazon warehouse because they're paying them £14 an hour and giving them a £3,000 signing on bonus. And so, if you're just going to focus on price, that's a really hard one to win on. But that people stay with the organisations that they love working for, that they really believe in what they do. They feel valued. They can see what their progression might look like. And while some people haven't got their whole career planned out, the one thing that hospitality can really offer is progression and the opportunity to come in on a reasonably low salary, but quite quickly progress and get promoted a couple of times and earn a really great salary, take on a really good take on extra responsibility. And so an organization where you can see that and you can see how you can grow in that role, I think people are motivated to stay in.
So actually, I mean, it's interesting because this isn't advertorial, but with Flow, one of the things that we had a lot of from employers as a request was this kind of career map, which is something we've recently launched. And I think that it's fascinating that idea of being able to see beyond what they're doing right now, but also from our perspective, see beyond just this site as well. The amount of people who are in university who are working in our sites and in venues who don't necessarily realise that there could be a role for them in marketing or HR or any of those other parts of the business that we know. I remember my time at Thai Leisure Group that I was advertising for a marketing manager and got not one internal application out of 1,000 plus team. I knew full well that we had marketing students and people who'd studied marketing throughout the organisation. But the question for us was, were we really putting it out there in a way that meant that they knew about it and that they knew that was an opportunity for them? I mean, same question to you, Mark. Thinking about the time, I mean, what do you think the key to retention is in what you've seen?
It's the biggest headache that we've got, really. And there's no point in shining a bright light on a bad product. It's the fastest way to lose. I think in terms of retention, it's kind of the model's broken now, isn't it? In terms of margin and food, and I think there's going to have to be a bit of a watershed moment where I saw this morning on Twitter a lady in New York saying, I've raised my minimum wage to $25 an hour and everything's fine now, but not everyone can take those costs. So it is things like, if you're losing a lot of staff, you've got to be asking big questions of yourself. You've got to look at yourself. It's not happening by accident, right? And then I guess the second thing then is looking at, well, how could you model it to sort of make it work? There's a fundamental change here, and also there's other force factors as well. Like the delivery threat, and it's a frenemy kind of thing, and it's so difficult. I mean, I think the first thing you can do is, really just look at the care side. And I think Chris is right. If it becomes transactional, you've lost. But I'll tell you what, people that work in the Apple store could probably work in a million other places and get paid more. A lot of us that work in hospitality and marketing and all that can go and work for a bank or an investment thing and make more money, but we don't. So why is that? So I think it's got to be an out and out emotional play, and it's got to be about people that will resonate with. So I think from that perspective, we can only win through hearts and minds and care and emotion and making people feel great, and we can't do it on money. It's just never going to work, I don't think.
And it's interesting. I mean, some of the first comments here were about salary. And I mean, the reason I've not gone into that is, yes, we know it's a challenge. And I think to your point, Mark, there is a finite situation that we find ourselves in around, if it's not there, you can't give it, right? And I do think that there are circumstances where we know that there are people that need to pay more and can pay more. But I think for the most part, I think the sector's done well to stomach some of the increases of recent years, and I for one have seen that it's taken a huge burden, and I think that people are really reviewing their business models intrinsically to try and make sure that they can pay more and make sure that people are more productive so they can pay more, right? I suppose over to you for the last comment, really, Carly. So in your mind, what's that magic wand moment that will mean that people stay forever, right?
Oh, I wish I had a magic wand. I mean, it's hospitality, and I think the biggest thing is people work for people. And I think feeling invested, feeling valued, feeling like you're actually part of the bigger picture. You've got some structure in front of you. There's goals to reach, and they're achievable. Is such a big piece of what people want. And yes, you can do kind of like some tick box exercises of more money and more holiday, bigger pension, everything like that. But everyone wakes up every morning to go to work to probably be surrounded with the people. I remember when I was working at Novus Leisure back in the day, that was hard going, but I went to work every day to work with the people that I was with, and they've become my best friends and my family since then. So that is the heart and soul of hospitality, and that's kind of the bigger picture. And we can do tick boxes all day long, but actually hospitality is about people, and people work for people.
Awesome. Great final comments. I'm really aware that, look, I think we've got three great people here on the webinar who have given their time and talked a little bit about their organizations and how they can help. I just want to be really clear in terms of, from an outcome for them, if you are interested in hearing more about Hospitality Rising, Springboard, or Beers and Peers, put your comment in, say who you are, where you're from, who you want to hear from, and our team will do their utmost to make sure your details are passed on to Carly, Chris, and Mark, because we really want to make sure that tangibly this is adding value, and that was what this was about. I mean, these are organizations that we value our relationship with, and we really see add value to the sector. And I think for me, it's about acting and doing. It's not just about talking. So after 1 hour, let's hope that we've achieved something and that there's some outcome for at least a few of you from this call, and for the fantastic people we've got here presenting. So from me, from MAPAL Group, thank you so much to the three of you, and also to all of you that have tuned in. Feel free to put those comments in, and thank you to Carly, Chris, and Mark.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, James. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.